Let me turn our
Well,
audio on.
there's curated,
Curated. That's what I meant
there's
to say.
yeah, and there's collated. But yeah.
It definitely wasn't
And I took
collated.
a Well, and I took a picture of this setup, so because it's part of that up in the game thing, I actually have the laptop sitting on two reams of paper to get the camera to the right level, so it's not
That's
me
awesome.
looking
Oh,
down.
so you were curating.
I was
No, you were collating.
collating.
Okay, it appears we're live on Facebook.
We are. I see it.
Hey, Lindsay.
Hello, Facebook.
Let's see here. Share page. So we've got a good show for you guys today. I know the last couple of weeks we've kind of been up in the clouds, so to speak, with the technical stuff. And Joe's like, dude, we're going to bring this down. He says, I'm going to come on and we're going to bring this down to everybody else's level. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Back to the basics, right, Joe?
Yep.
So I was talking to the guys. I said, we've got a good pre-show discussion that we could have right now. Did you guys see the video on and everything that's going around about COPPA or COPPA or however you want to say it? COPPA? Does anybody know what
The
that
Children's
is?
Privacy Act that's going to affect monetization on YouTube.
It's also going to go into effect for everyday content creators if you do not select the correct setting.
Oh, yes, I did see that.
If
Yes.
you create content that you say is appropriate for children and somebody lets something slip, you could be fined up to $42,000.
Oh, wow.
And they're 10 they're 10 point checklist, if you will, doesn't really tell you exactly what you can and can't do. It's very vague. And there's a lawyer that's they call him the social media lawyer. And if you look him up on YouTube, and he kind of goes into it.
Mitch Jackson?
Oh, no. This is an actual I guess he's a practice. I can send you the link then. But he talks about how this is going to be tough for content creators, and basically all the monetization for kid geared videos and shows is not going to be anymore. He talks about how YouTube's going to lose a lot of content creators just because of that. Like your channels could get deleted by the FCC if they do the automatic algorithms if you do not select what you're targeting. So it's kind of scary as
It's
content creators.
extremely scary. And I think one of the big things about that too, Steve, is the fact that, more and more companies are relying on artificial intelligence to play police. And you see this all the time. I had something in my timeline today on Facebook pop up, and it was had the block over it. This is graphic and may disturb people. Click the button to uncover the picture. And it was a forklift driving into a corner of a little shelf that fell over. And I was like, okay, so computers are trying. I get it in one sense, but if there's any reform that needs to be done with internet and the web, and certainly monetization and what all, social media, all that we're all about, it needs to be that the companies that are supplying, the Facebooks, the Googles, and YouTubes, they need to have human involvement at a very, very direct and meaningful level early on, where if you have a problem, you can get a hold of somebody. Last year, I had to delete my Facebook account after 10 years because I had an old email. My password expired and I couldn't fix it for 2 months. And it was because you'd write and 3 months later you get something back going, well, we'll get back to you, or try this. And, if you don't have that, you get the old email back. And I'm like, no. So I think I think we need some sort of a governmental reform on the fact that companies are supplying wealth of opportunity for people to get online, but they're not doing anything in terms of support. And that would fix the problem in a big way.
Well, the gentleman I spoke about, that is the social media lawyer. Again, if people are interested, I can post that link later. Again, this is not meant to be gospel, if you will, but he started a petition so he can send it to YouTube and the FCC to say, hey, look, can we revisit this again? Because it's not really fair for content creators. Because I mean, look, let's just I'll just say this because we're not recording, but I do retro video game stuff. Joe, you know that you've kind of seen some stuff. That's technically geared toward anybody. Kids, it's kid friendly. There's no cursing, there's no bad anything on it. It's just it's geared to that. But if they find something on there that is quote unquote adult related, I could be in big trouble.
hmm Well, even if the
So,
game itself, and I had a Fred that had some video that was up on YouTube, and it was a video of an event, and in the background, someone on their phone was playing a piece of music, and he actually got, a ding on YouTube. It wasn't even a part of his video. It was just background noise, but because it came through on his video, and it wasn't even, again, full song, it was just a small clip.
mhm.
They dinged him for copyright infringement on that. And again, it's how are you going to police all of that? There's got to be a certain amount of fair use. And to your point on the retro gaming, those games, while not graphic, I mean, they're cartoonish, they still show, difficult situations in some of them. And based on the way they've got that written, you could be in big trouble. And again, it's not even your content. This is stuff it's retro at this point. It's not even cutting edge stuff.
I think it's because Zuckerberg and a lot of the folks like him are thinking that somehow robots will be able to do all this and really get really good at it. And it will never be that way because things are subjective. Situations
Well, yeah,
have
exactly.
meaning and words have meaning. And you have to know what the context is, which, a computer will never be able to do that.
Well, so you can go on and cyberbully somebody on YouTube, Facebook, and all these other places, but heaven forbid the computer gives the wrong algorithm and now you're getting sued essentially. So I don't know. This is all stuff that's new, but everybody, if you're a content creator, and since this show kind of falls into that category of content creation / social media, it's really important that you pay attention, get involved, sign the petitions. This isn't a political thing. This is if you're trying to build content for your brand, if you're a single content creator for yourself, or if you're doing this as your own business, this is going to affect you in some way, shape, or form. So it's very important that you pay attention to this. Don't just sweep it under the carpet, And this goes back to what we've always said. Don't always put your trust in all these platforms. Get a website. House your own content.
Have a backup plan.
That's right. That's right. We talked about that.
Steve, is Blab by any chance still operating today?
No.
Yeah, no.
No.
That's where you and I met. So
yeah, so just a little pre-show nugget there for you guys. And just so you know, sorry, I got the flu last Saturday, and by Monday my voice was gone. It's slowly coming back. So if it sounds like I'm rough today, I am rough today, but the show must go on. So we're gonna keep it going. I'm gonna try
Muscle
not to
through
talk.
it.
Yeah, it's a half-hour show. I'm hoping by the end of the show I'm not gonna be dead, but we'll see. I've got the lozenger in my mouth, so I'll get us going, and then I'll just kind of like, okay, guys.
we'll have you
So-
sing us out like Tone Loc. You'll be good.
Yeah, right. So, well, we appreciate everybody coming in. I see you guys over on LinkedIn. I see Jeremy's over there. Hey, I do want to let you know before we go dark here, we have a brand new Discord app or channel up and running.
Channel.
Yes, and Joe helped me off hours, off time to get that thing up and going because I wanted to sit down and finally get that going. So we got the channel set up. So you can look for I believe it's #Telestream.
Mhm.
And then once you're in there, you'll see the On Social channel. There's a general room. So you can go in there and we'll have everybody kind of like you could be in there all week long and chat with other people, get suggestions. But Joe's one of our moderators in there. So he's going to kind of keep an eye on things, help you guys out. So we have that there. And I believe there's a rules channel, it looks like, right?
There's a rules channel, but we don't have any in yet. I need to talk about
Yeah, and
that. Just kind of
everybody's
what
been cool.
performance.
So so go ahead and do that. And if you guys want to join that, that would be great. So we're going to go dark here and get this shindig on the road. What do you think?
I like it.
Ready.
All right. Hey guys, welcome to another edition of On Social, the show that talks about everything that has to do with social media, live video, and a whole lot of other things. My name is Stephen Haywood, and I am joined by Mr. Jeffrey Fitzgerald from jeffandhighdef.tv. Welcome, sir.
Hey, good afternoon. Glad to be here with everybody. Looking forward to a good conversation.
It should be really good. We've got also joining us Mr. Joe Zahadis. Welcome.
Hey guys, sorry I'm remote today and I'm on wireless, so the picture's not the greatest. Apologize.
Well, we're gonna kind of bear with that because today's show, Joe and I had a conversation earlier this week, and he was stating to me, he said, "Hey, I love what you guys are doing. You're doing some awesome stuff, but," he says, "can we bring it down a notch? Can we talk about stuff that, like, everyday people know how to do?" So I invited Joe on the show today to kind of talk to Jeff and myself because, as you know, Marty is at another one of his parties. That guy parties way too much, and he's he's traveling back from New York City right now. He's probably going to watch this. So Joe, what are some of the things that you wanted to kind of dive into here? Like what's been your takeaway through this journey?
You guys are excellent at what you do. Obviously, you're crafting your trade, and in watching a lot of the social media that I have been seeing on LinkedIn and on YouTube, mostly professional videos, but a lot of socially driven videos. The biggest takeaway that I'm seeing, and I think that we as a community could use help with, is some of those early day setups. Just upping our game a little bit. We don't have maybe perhaps some of the camera and some of the audio. I do, not here in a remote environment, but certainly within my own studio. How can someone up their game to be a little more professional? I tried to set up this backdrop here so that it looks a little better, even though, again, I'm on a wireless play today. I certainly have a little better camera than the one that's on the laptop. What are some of the other things that people can do, both in setting up their the structure as well as some of the audio and video?
Well, this is the way I would describe it, Joe. I think that I would describe it as being better with your video, if you want to call it professional or however you want to look at it. Being better with the video really is about the technique, not the technology. And I think a lot of times, we see the new catalog come out, and there's like, oh my gosh, this should be really cool if I have this in my arsenal. And I know, I can think of my brother, myself, and a lot of other people that have a lot of things we probably shouldn't have purchased because we thought somehow that'll get us a little farther down the line, instead of really learning how to be better with what we've already got. And a great example of this would be, even though it's not a video example, in photos, like with an iPhone, a lot of times I get people saying, "Oh my gosh, your photos look really nice. They're well composed, and they're kind of noticeably better." It's not about me, but what I'm doing is I'm literally just getting closer to the people that I want to see, and I'm looking at all four corners of my screen, of the image, and I'm trying to figure out what doesn't belong there, and I'm trying to get around having that in there. Less distraction, a little bit moving a couple feet forward, or using this little zoom that's on there. It's a simple technique, has nothing to do with what camera you've got, and yet I hear a lot of times people say, "Oh my gosh, that looks a little better than maybe what I thought it would." And so it's one good example of the kind of things you start thinking about in video. Where can you make a difference without having to spend a lot of money?
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to Marty. I know he's not here, but Marty's a big cheerleader for the iPhone. When he's on location, he uh, he shoots everything with it. I mean, we've seen videos of his setup on location, but he's essentially using the iPhone and even the built-in microphone. So I guess it's the technique, not the gear, right?
Mhm.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. The technique is something that can be learned fairly quickly if you open your heart. I guess that's the right way to say it. If you really open yourself up to looking at how do I improve myself if I don't have to get on B&H or Amazon, and I'm going to have to make it better anyway. And sometimes it's not easy because we want these simple, slick solutions. And you can learn how to hold a camera at arm's length fairly steady, learn how to get yourself positioned in there when you're talking, or you can go and buy the Bluetooth enabled $70 extendable selfie stick, which I actually have one. Somebody gave me one as a review. And I found that I can't keep the thing from shaking because it's so far out there. It's got this great extension on it. But again, it goes back to, if you think about it, there's a way that you can learn every one of these little pieces, which really involve your picture quality. You want to be in focus. You want to make sure that you've got good front lighting. You don't want to be standing in front of a window to your back or have the sun to your back, because that makes a dark silhouette. The audio needs to be, crystal clear or near crystal clear. And if you're in a really, really loud environment, one of the things you can do is add an iPhone microphone or a microphone that will clip to you. And now you've got the ability to shrink that sphere of what's coming in there a little bit. And then it's just a matter of how you want to compose it and tell your story. But yeah, the technology is secondary to the technique.
Does that answer your question,
Yeah,
Joe?
and what I've seen, yeah, no, and I have, and what I've seen with a lot of the social media pieces that I've seen, great people, great content. I don't think that we as a community at this level, and I consider myself in the newbie world, we're not paying enough attention to the corners, and what's going on in the background. A lot of people are just thinking that the content that they're providing and or the dialogue they're having is carrying this social media, and they're not looking into the four corners to realize there's a distraction out there that's really taking away from the message that they're trying to bring.
Yeah, the trade-off is these days is that it's never been a better time to get into video, because you don't have to have the ESPN look that that we have in some ways. I mean, this is the world that I work in. So for me, I love the TV feel, and that's kind of why I like making it look more like this. But it's not necessary. The reality is that you can do great things with your phone. You can do great things on location, even in your home, even standing in front of a white wall. But the hook is, if you want to attract someone and you want to engage them, it's going to come down to your media and your message. So the fundamentals have got to be in place. They have to be able to see and hear you. And then you have to know what you're going to say as part of that too, and to create kind of a greater value for everybody. But Joe, let me ask you this: what got you in to this? This is something that is new for you. You're a very successful businessman. And by the way, Corinder Mali on LinkedIn is asking how you started your business. You can answer that as well. But you obviously had a passion for this. Where did you get into all this, and obviously move forward and wanting to be even better at it with video?
Oddly enough, my departure into online, live streaming media and some of the media I'm creating for YouTube and online comes from gaming. I've been a pretty substantial video gamer for quite some time. I've run with a number of different communities, playing a number of games online and streaming that content. So I have a lot of the technology to stream the content from the game online. And it wasn't a big leap to jump from that into some of the technology, a little better camera, some materials that help with some of the lower thirds, to get into the streaming part. And I've been a business individual in the space for a long time. And my next departure is to start giving back to the community. And to me, the logical choice was video, whether it be via LinkedIn, YouTube. Trying to think of the other one, but I'm losing it off the top of my head right now. But Facebook. That's kind of my next step. Yeah, it's not my favorite.
Well, that's awesome. So when we talk about getting back to basics, you obviously are, well along on your journey with video, but at the same time, there's things that you feel like you're trying to learn. And I think this show was kind of a catalyst with a comment that you made, that you wanted to see us do something that really brought everybody back to kind of the 101, 201 level. What challenges do you feel like you're having right now with video, and where do you feel like you've had some wins?
My greatest challenges with video right now is, and that's what you guys are great inspiration for this and help for me, in that I'm great in front of a crowd of, 1, 2, 10, 200 people. I can present. That's what I've done for a living for my entire life. Putting that same content, that same dialogue into an internet environment, I'll admit it's scary as all get out. And that is probably my greatest challenge, is just it's getting over that hurdle to say, I'm going to get online with Stephen and Jeff, and I'm going to talk, and we're going to have a dialogue, and I'm not going to worry about it. That for me has been the biggest hurdle.
Well, I'll let you in on a little secret. I have never not been extremely nervous before going live on the internet, and it's the weirdest thing in the world. I started as a kid. My mom was a TV producer. I have no excuse for it, but I just recently started doing LinkedIn Live. I got the beta approved about a month ago, and I did my first show, and I'm working on getting a series in place called Video is Authority. But I got to tell you something, especially with LinkedIn, you feel like you're presenting in front of a corporate room of people that you don't know. And in the Valley is there's no feedback. There's no way to know. You can look at comments, which are a great support, but it's really difficult. But I said this in my first show, which is embrace the awkward anyway. Have the faith that you're going to be able to get through it. And imperfection is perfection instead of doing nothing. And so it's just awesome to have you here today. And you're doing great things, and you're going to do even better things.
Well, again, I apologize. I'm sitting here looking at myself to a certain extent. I apologize for the feed. Wireless is all I've got. And obviously I'm presenting from the laptop. And I think as a community, those of us who are building, I think a lot of people do that. And if I were to say, what are the success side of things? So that's the greatest challenge. The success is I have enough of a technical understanding and technical acumen, both from gaming and just my early days into technology. If I were to give one suggestion, and it has been my success, don't use wireless. Don't be on a Wi-Fi connection to do this kind of stuff. It just doesn't work. And in my office, it's all wireline. But here in this conference room that I'm at, yeah, wireless is all I've got. And yeah, it clearly shows.
Well, that's awesome. And everybody probably can figure out by now. I'm trying to talk a little bit more to let Steve rest his voice a little bit. Steve, you speak up if you need me to shut up. I've never met a microphone I didn't like. Everybody knows that. I'd like to hear from everybody who's watching. What are your biggest challenges with getting back to basics, starting with video? And then what is that big win? Where do you feel like you've actually made a win? And it doesn't have to be that you got on and live stream in front of the Grammys. It might be that, my gosh, I got in front of the camera and I was trembling, didn't know what I was going to say, but I hit the button anyway, because that's a win. And it's something that everybody can do, because Joe, you said it yourself, you speak before hundreds of people, and as well as I do, that really kind of intimidates a lot of people. But what really gets everybody, I think, across the board is the one-to-one, which is what this kind of feels like sometimes, doesn't it?
For me, it does, but I can honestly tell you, in the context of being, I would consider myself a content creator to a certain extent, but it's always been in a live environment, in a business environment. Now to be a content creator, and I think for me, that's the other challenge, is there is no feedback. So you're creating content and you're sharing what you believe to be a good story and good content and good information. I always have the direct feedback of the people in the room to know if I'm on the right path, am I going the right way, do I need to adjust it? You don't have that in this environment. I mean, you're just presenting to the world.
And you're hoping that there's some engagement. And in the world we live in, what do we always have? The replays get a lot of views, obviously, but we don't know, people are busy at different times, and you may have one viewer or two viewers. And the worst thing that happens is you've got that courage up, you're stepping in front of that camera, you're talking about your real estate business or whatever it might be, and then your eye creeps over to that little live view count and it says 1, and you're like, oh my gosh, what I'm saying must not be resonating, especially if you maybe had 4 or 5 or 10 people join. But you can't do that though, right? Because that's not the metric we go by, because that's not where you get your validation, is that live view count. Steve, I'm sure you would agree with that. You've got more followers than anybody. You've been doing this longer than a lot of folks. How did you overcome that in the beginning, where it felt like you weren't really sure people were going to resonate with what you were putting out there?
Well, I mean, it's just doing it, right? It's trial and error. Get out there and do it. And there's a lot of things that I've been embarking in recently, and I didn't know how people were going to react to it, because it's not my norm. It's not my tech or broadcasting or outdoor. You know, we talked about this a little bit in pre-show, but the gaming aspect, retro arcades and things like that, and it was well received by the community because of the quality of video that I'm putting out. But a lot of times you don't get that feedback, right? So it's like the person that's doing TV, it's getting taped, but we're doing it live, and it's a little bit more daunting because there's only one take. You're not going back and fixing it. Like, whatever happens, happens. Like that's how it's going to go. So, I think for me, it's just always been just trying to push the bar, constantly try to evolve, if you will, into what I'm doing, or pushing the limits, pushing my boundaries. And, not to say that I'm doing anything different or better than anybody else, but I'm doing something different and better than I was 2 years ago. And I think that's the
That's
key
right.
for everybody, is as long as you're doing better than you were, and you've got a few core followers, nurture those followers, nurture that community, and that community is going to grow. You're going to watch it grow. There's no denying it. Right.
I think that's valuable. Joe, I'd like to know what you think about that. I mean, my take on it is that if you can't value the 3 or 4 people you have, you're probably not going to do any better with 3 or 400 or 3 or 4,000. It's something where you've got to do the work from the get go in the small way.
Well, I can tell you from even from my gaming streaming, I do not have a lot of followers, and actually, my streaming was initially built not even for any followers. It was just something I wanted to do because it's fun, and it's kind of fun to put that stuff out there. There are a number in the community that have a lot of followers, and they put out a lot of, I would say, good, some not so good video content, and it was just something I wanted to do. And I have a few followers, and it's fun for me, and I continue to push it out there. I continue to stream. Some of it I record. I'm obviously recording more now, but my streaming started just purely to please myself and just to put it out there. And I've picked up a few followers, and it's fun. And you get feedback from them, and it's a hoot to hear what people have to say. But yeah, the original intent was not even about followers. It was just something I wanted to do.
Well, you said something there that I think is really important, and it is that you're having fun with it. Something you were familiar with. You weren't doing it to gain followers. Steve, I probably would suspect you're in the same vein. You had a passion for something to begin with, which usually means you've been in it enough to kind of either be a pseudo expert or know enough you feel comfortable talking about. And so that's one of the real rules for content, right? Is to be able to speak to something that you're well versed in, that you feel comfortable about speaking, and that will open that door up to be more comfortable, because now you don't feel like I'm grasping for words and what do I think and how do I do this? I know Jeremy on LinkedIn says, not having content, and not just for now, but for the further engagement, is the biggest hurdle. And that's really true, Steve. How did you work through that hurdle? How did you get through wondering, number one, what is everybody going to like? And then you put something out, you get marginal engagement on it. Well, what do? Do you keep going down that road, or you do something different?
So I'll use the example that, the new stuff that I've been doing is with the retro arcades. And I started doing videos on this brand new one that just came out. And I like to think of my specialty, and this isn't me tooting my own horn, it's just feedback that I've gotten, is I'm a very analytical person when it comes to doing tutorials. Like, I get down to the nuts and bolts. I take you through step by step of what you need to do. So if there's a certain new firmware that comes out with this internet connected arcade game, I take people through the setup steps that may not be tech savvy, where you're setting up a remote server on your local network to stream a Steam game completely over your own network into a cabinet and use the controls to do that. The companies actually have been reaching out because of the videos that I've been doing. And the hurdle is, what do I do next? And usually these types of things, come up. These types of things is, how do I create content where people are going to learn from it? I'm not at the point where, I think you said earlier, where, like, okay, if I get 10,000 subscribers based off that, my goal is, like you said, I love doing this, and if it's helping people, then I've achieved my goal. And I think the content speaks for itself, because people are coming back and the numbers are going up because
Mhm.
people are benefiting from the content that I'm creating. Whether it's as highly produced as this, because sometimes I have to use a cell phone because I got to get inside the back of the cabinet, the content's still there. So I think just understanding your audience and the niche that you're in is going to help you get over that hurdle. That's just my opinion, anyways.
Yeah, no, and I would agree with that. I think that you you illustrate it perfectly, Steve, which content is always going to be above production, while production still needs to be solid, right? I mean, that's the thing. You can be solid with a phone as well as you can be with anything else. Um, and I think it's one of the real challenges that a lot of people have, is trying to figure out, what, when we use the word content, it's a container, it's a variable that could mean a million things to a million different people. How do you, when you look at content, in terms of getting back to basics, Joe or Steve, what do you think about? Are you just being authentic to yourself? And if I like it, I think maybe other people would like it, or is it more strategic and innovative?
Well, I'll take it first. From my perspective and the content that I've been building and developing to push out, you have to break it down, certainly in an internet environment, into bite-sized chunks. And when I look at some of the content I'm even building and scripting out, and the topic ideas I'm coming up with, I've got to break it down into smaller bite-sized pieces, because there's just too much to get into one place at one time. So that's the first piece for me. And beyond that, it's just doing it. I will say that in my personal take, right now, live is a lot easier than videotaping it, because I can't even tell you how many retakes some of these take just to get what I want down in a way that I feel is going to be impactful and have some takeaway for people that it's being built for.
There is it's funny you say that about live, because that's actually, I think, the best way to learn. It sounds like in some ways, hey, I'll do the recordings until I feel confident enough, and that works for a lot of folks. But if you can actually push the button and get in front of a video camera and speak to this netherworld called the internet, and you're done, at least you can wipe your brow and say, you know what, for this week, whether it was great or whether it was not so great, I got through it and I did it. And that's a feather in your cap, and it's a mark that you don't have, you'll never lose there. And it's also, I think, symbolic of stepping out and trusting that what you're putting out is good enough. Because I in the home studio here, I over the last 2 years, I produced about 100 shows here for one company. It was Online News for Business. It was an internal company with multi campuses, and I had the leisure of saying I'm going to record it over if I didn't like it. And I would think in my head I made like 8 or 9 mistakes. Do it again, same thing, same thing. 2 hours later, I would look at what I had done in the beginning and the end, and there were minor differences, but nothing significant. And I think in some ways, if you can get yourself into the mode of, I'm going to go live, I'm going to, again, embrace the awkward, go back to the basics, do the right things the right way in the beginning, you're probably going to find that you would never have had to do anything different anyway, because we judge ourselves harsher, I think, than other people do.
No,
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Before we go on, I'll give Jeff a chance to rest here for a second. I do want to take this opportunity. As you guys know, Telestream has been really generous in allowing us to produce this show and come on here and do this. And one of the things that they've done for us, well, I should say for you guys, the audience, is they've given us an opportunity to give you guys a discount code. If you guys head on over to telestream.net and you can use the code ONSOCIAL10. That's on social, the number 10. You can get 10% off your Wirecast software. You've heard us talk about it. We're talking about basics. There's Wirecast Studio, Wirecast Pro. So this code is only good for Wirecast Studio or Pro, because Wirecast 1 is the basic version. It's very inexpensive as it is. But if you want to take it to the next level and you want to get in here and Joe, this is even something that you can use on the road. This is something that's great. I know, Jeff, you're using it right now for your video presentations, presenting it to us. We're using it here in the studio. This is a great way that you guys can step up your game. And, hey, it's a great deal, 10% off. So we want to thank the folks over at Telestream for offering that and giving us the ability to share that with the folks.
Yeah, it is a tremendous deal. Wirecast has been a leader. Telestream's been a leader in the encoding and video space long before we ever heard of Wirecast, and so having that history and that technical advantage really went well for Wirecast. And I think it's the best product right now for live streaming. There's no doubt about it. The Chroma key alone is worth it for me. I love the virtual camera. There's a number of advantages, and it just depends on what you're wanting to do. Wirecast 1 is single camera. You can get started at a really low buy-in, but yet you'll learn all the things you need to learn, that when you want to grow, you've got the ability to move right on into Wirecast Studio or Wirecast Pro. And then when you're a champ, you can have the Wirecast gear and go out and do basketball and make yourself Chris Berman with ESPN and have a lot of fun. So,
oh, it's awesome. It's awesome. So, Joe, we're coming up quick here at the end of the half hour here. We got about 5 minutes left. Do you have any other things that you want to throw out there for folks to, for the basics?
Yeah, there's probably about 1 million additional questions, but that certainly starts up. If I were to throw one out for just as an idea, even for next time, or even to lead off and start talking about it now, one of the things you guys have leaned on, and I think it's one that we could all have as a takeaway, and I'm certainly working on a regular basis, is the audio component of whatever you're doing, live or recorded. That's kind of a key piece. And I think, going back to basics, now I'm using the microphone that's on the laptop right now because that seems to be providing the best audio, the setup the way it is. I would ask, that question: what's one up from base grade? We all have XLR microphones. There's studio grade stuff. You can put a lot of money into a soundboard. There's a lot of places you could take that. But I think it was Marty that talked in one of the earlier shows about a dynamic microphone. I would expound on that. What can people do? What at the newbie level can kind of up that just from base?
Well, you said it. I think the reality is, and this is something that we don't talk about a lot, at least not overtly, but the reality is that there's industry standard products that have always been part of broadcast and the AV world. And then there's this new vein of consumer driven USB devices and great microphones. The Yetis come to mind. But if you really want to move beyond, what you can find at Best Buy, it would involve getting yourself something like a $200 Mackie mixer, a little portable 8-channel mixer, um, and getting a microphone like a Heel PR40. I don't know, Steve, is that what you're using right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, these microphones are absolutely incredible, and they're more affordable than some of the bigger microphones. There's a number of things you can do, but really it comes down to when you spend a little more money. Number one, you're gonna that equipment's gonna last a lot longer, and you're gonna have peace of mind about it because you're not trying to figure out what went wrong with something that either has some sort of a physical problem or maybe it's just not capable of delivering at the level that you want it to. And I mean, I can attest to that. I have two Shure SM7 microphones that I bought in 1999 that I still use today. And that Shure was only replaced in here about 2 months ago because they had the opportunity to get an Electro Voice RE27, which is one of the fabulous radio mics at a really good price. But I didn't have to replace it because of failure. So that $350 I spent in 1999 is still working for me today. But we get into this mentality of I want better lighting or I want a better audio system. Oh, but I don't want to spend more than $100. Well, the reality is that if you stay in that mindset, you're going to get the best of what that $100 can get you, but you're never going to grow to the point where you've got peace of mind. That's how I describe it. And Steve, I mean, that's what we're all about with this show. We're not necessarily saying you need to go out and waste money, but that money is an investment. And if your brand is important to you, if your hourly rate is important and you would rather not spend 4 hours trying to figure out where your audio went when you wanted it to go in a certain place, to me, there's a value in that. And so you have to weigh that out, I think.
And there's a reason
I,
to tack on
go
what
ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, to tack on to what Jeff's saying. There's a reason that we spend the money on this type of equipment because how many times have you guys come on to watch the show? We're 27 episodes deep, and we never came on here and said, "Up, we can't do the show because this isn't working or that's not working." We've had instances, with guests not being able to connect, things like that. But that's kind of like out of your control when you're using remote systems. But honestly, how many times have you been able to see that? And the reason for that is, like Jeff just said, confidence in your system. Yeah, you spend a lot of money on it, but I do this for my day job. This is part of my job. If they can't rely on me to have gear that works to do this, they're going to find somebody else to do the job. So that's kind of you got to figure out, is this just a hobby? Is this just something you're just doing for fun? And that's okay if it is. But I mean, right, Jeff, you don't want to be if you're just going to do this for fun, maybe you don't want to sink all that kind of money into it.
Of course. Yeah. And no one's saying that you should. There are a lot of great microphones that work in that entry level space and maybe a couple steps above that. But to Joe, your question, it really, I guess the real question is you have to start with your end in mind. Do you want to be a bigger deal to yourself, I guess, and have a
Mm.
bigger studio and more elaborate equipment, or is it a part-time, kind of a pastime? I know for you, it obviously looks like you're growing into this and you're taking full advantage of the opportunity to use the internet to build your company.
And I would agree and echo with what both of you said in that context because, and it's exactly where it was kind of a leading question, but exactly where I was going to. What is your commitment to your own professionalism and space within this, environment? It's one thing to, and again, nothing against a camera on a laptop and the microphone that comes with it, but what is your commitment to what you're trying to present in terms of a finished product? Even when I did the gaming streaming, I took it from a single rig to a dual rig because my goal was to make sure that the video content that I was streaming and that I was putting out was the best I could put out because I made that commitment to the space. Same thing in this environment, I'm doing the same. And that was my question. From an up a game, I see a lot of people putting out pretty good content, but it doesn't seem like they're committed to their own quality and professionalism within the nature of what they're doing. That's all. Not in a bad way, just doesn't seem to be there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's truth in that, and I agree with you that you have to really kind of figure out early on what you want to do. We just, we just covered that. But I would say this, what we don't want to say here, ending the show, is that the microphone is going to be everything. If you get the bigger, better mic, you're going to sound great, and it's this radio thing, right? You are still the number one main attraction to your live stream, hands down. That will never change because, again, it's the technique over the technology. And so you start with
Right.
what you got, even if it's not the greatest. Make your content so great that nobody notices the fact that your microphone probably could get better. That's how I would phrase it.
And let me kind of we'll end with this. I want to say this too, and don't get caught up with this. This is a prime example. Jeff and I both do stuff on broadcasting. I don't look at Jeff as competition. He doesn't look at me as competition. Jeff does it his way. He does things his way. I do things my way. The benefit Jeff and I have to doing our own broadcasting type shows and content is we're giving you, the community, more options to choose from. You might like Jeff's way of doing things better than you like mine, but you like mine because you like my personality. You like the way I deliver things. And maybe there's some things that you pull out that you go, man, that's really cool. If I do it the way Jeff was talking about and I take what Steven was saying and I put it together, man, that's going to be killer. There's too
Mhm.
much of that going on. I see a lot, not just in this space, but in other spaces. And I think the reality of it is these spaces are big enough for everybody. I mean, we collaborate with so many different broadcasters out there because not one person has all the answers. If they have all the answers, then I should just hang it up because I haven't met one person that has all the answers to all this. So I would state that to you, going into this, it's always good to have those people, and it's going to help you push the bar. When I went into this gaming arena with the arcades, I found some people that needed some assistance, whether it be graphics or whatever, and I start trying to pull them up to my level or where I think my level is because that's my goal. I want to help people, and that should be your goal because let me tell you something, you're going to build a bigger following doing something like that than being the guy
Mhm.
that is unapproachable. If you're unapproachable, you're not going to have a community. I'm sorry. Jeff, do you want to follow that up?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And I think this actually goes hand in hand with a comment on Facebook. Lindsay Badger said that it would be great if I could get through what I want to say without a gazillion ums and ahs. It would be a good day. And you know what the reality is? Without those ums and ahs, it becomes almost so plastic that people can't relate. And that's something that I feel like anybody who's coming from a professional side, you almost have to unlearn how to try to be that news guy, right? It's like, you're very postured and everything you kind of pay. It's almost like leave that all beside. The ums and ahs are fine because that's conversation. It's what you're saying, not how you're saying it 9 times out of 10. And so, Lindsay, I think you're probably doing a lot better than you think you are.
So I shouldn't be muting every time I have to cough here because it's more organic. Is that what you're saying?
Well, if we start the own social health channel, yes, that would be great.
We'll have to get
And then
Lee
we'll put the
Kelso.
lab test up. That would make a great game show.
We'll have to get Lee Kelso on for that one.
Yes.
Well, you know what? Listen, guys, I really appreciate everybody coming out. And I know I didn't say this at the beginning of the show, but I got hit with the flu last week, lost my voice on Monday, and I'd say it's probably 75-80% back. I still got this nasty cough, and I've spared you all from hearing that. I've got my little mute button. But I do want to give a special thanks to Jeff for taking the reins today, really driving the train today, and getting this show rolling with the questions that Joe had. So thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate that.
Oh, no worries. I mean, you're the one that makes this thing happen, and even with being sick, he's the one directing this whole thing. So, shout out to our main producer here.
Also want to thank Mr. Joe Zahitis from coming on here and giving us a whole mess of really cool questions and things to think about, and even a structure going forward, Joe, of what we can do with content. Really appreciate that.
Thanks. Appreciate everything you guys do. Really enjoy being a part of it.
Awesome. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I do want to let you know next week, because it's Thanksgiving, obviously we usually do the show on a Thursday. Next week it's going to be on a Wednesday, so mark your calendars. If you have any questions as far as the Discord chat, see Joe. He'll get you taken care of in there and get everything situated. But next week, Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, here we'll have On Social episode number 28. And I believe Marty will be back. The whole crew will be back next week. So we really appreciate everybody tuning in and hanging out with us here. And we'll see you all next week. Have a good one.